Hey there YouTube. So for this video I wanted to cover the IRS Form 3911. You can file this if you did not receive one or more of your stimulus checks or the Economic Impact Payments, so they officially call them, during 2020 or 2021. So I've got a sample in front of us here that we'll walk through, and then I've also got a slide that covers the background on this and what kind of procedures you need to do to complete this form. So I'll start with the slide and then we'll kind of flip back and forth between the form. So the 3911 is not a new form. It's been around for many years. Typically you file this if you already submitted a 1040 and the refund check never made it to you. So it was either lost in the mail, the IRS never issued it, maybe the bank account details were wrong for their direct deposit. So now the form is also being used to reclaim those lost EIPs. So the IRS issued 3 economic impact payments, 2 during 2020, and then 1 went out in 2021. If you didn't get any of these payments, then you can file this 3911 to reclaim it. So there were 3 stimulus checks, right? The first one, EIP 1, was issued during May 2020. The max amount that was supposed to go out was $1,200 for an individual, so single filing taxpayer, and then $2,400 if you were married filing joint. And then you got an additional $500 for each qualifying child. Now notice here I have EIP 1 issued after the first stimulus check, EIP 2 here, EIP 3. Pay attention to those because that's important. When you file the 3911, you have to indicate which payment it is you're missing. Okay, you don't just file this for all the payments or not being very precise about which payment you need. You need to let the IRS know exactly which one you're missing, and so you're going to indicate EIP 1, 2, or 3 depending on which one that wasn't delivered to you. So the second stimulus check, again, these went out in December. $600 a person, $1,200 married filing joint, and then an extra $600 for each kid. And then the third one was $1,400 for an individual, $2,800 for married filing joint, and then an additional $1,400 for each qualifying child. Okay, so now let's look at the procedures. At the top of the 3911, you're going to have to indicate what type of payment you're missing. Okay, that's the one that you're requesting a check for. If you are missing more than one, then you have to fill out a 3911 for each one. Okay, don't commingle them. Right, be very precise about which check you're missing. If you're missing 2, then you'll do a separate one for each payment. So you can see here on the 3911, in this example for John, he's a single filing taxpayer and he is missing his 3rd payment. So we have EIP 3 at the top there. You can handwrite that in there. If you're using a PDF editor, type it up with the typewriter tool. Just make sure it's very clear which payment it is you're missing. Okay. Now, in section 1, we're going to enter the information on the taxpayer and then check the information about what type and amounts of payments we're missing. So here we have section 1, we have John Q. taxpayer, his social security number and his address and a telephone number. Make sure you put all this information in there, otherwise the IRS won't process it. If you are married filing joint taxpayers, you must include your name and your spouse's name. Okay, don't leave spouse's name blank. Both of your information has to be on here, and both of you are going to have to sign this. Okay, it's just like a 1040. If you have 2 married filing joint taxpayers, you're going to both have to sign this at the bottom of the form. Okay. In part 4 here, as it says, if any information changed since you last filed your return, update it. Okay, so if you've already filed, let's say you filed your 2020 tax return and you had a change of address in the interim there, use a different, make sure that you indicate what your previous address was, right? In this case, John's been living in the same place for the last few years, so he doesn't have a change of address, so we're leaving it blank. Okay, so box 7 here, type of return. This is an individual request for a refund, right? Business would be if you're filing, let's say, a corporate return, Form 1120. Obviously, that doesn't apply here. They didn't give stimulus checks to corporations. They sent them to individual taxpayers. So we have an individual taxpayer. The tax period is 2020 for all 3 payments, okay? Even though that 3rd check went out in 2021, it still applied to the 2020 tax year. So indicate 2020 for all 3 of these, depending on whether it's EIP 1, 2, or 3. Date filed field, leave this blank, right? Again, this, because you didn't file anything to obtain the stimulus check, this would only be completed if you were actually filing a Form 1040 for a prior year, let's say, and they didn't, you didn't get your refund. You would let them know when you filed your return, either electronically or on paper. So for the stimulus check payments, these EIP requests, leave this blank. and put 2020 in there. Now, we're requesting a check. You can do direct deposit. I think the checks are actually probably easier in this case. So John's asking for another paper check. It's a treasury check. And then the amount here. Okay, so he's doing an EIP3 request, right? Because he did not get his $1,400. So in this box, we're indicating $1,400 is the total amount of check. Now, if you're married filing joint, right, that'd be $2,800. If you're a single filer and you have a kid, then you tack on the additional amount for the dependents. So carefully calculate what it was you were supposed to get, and then enter that amount here, right? So section 2, we're indicating I didn't receive a refund, right? So that's clear, right? I mean, you didn't get the refund check at all. If this does apply to you here, I received a refund check but it was lost, stolen, or destroyed, then in that case you would indicate that box, right? So if you got the check in the mail and it went through the shredder for some reason, then you can request a new one. You would check that box. But for most people filing this, they just didn't get anything at all. So for box 8, they're checking that I didn't receive a refund. Okay, if you have if you are wanting direct deposit, then you can fill out box 11 here. Give them your bank routing number and account number and bank name. But again, in this case, we're just requesting a paper check, so we're going to leave those items blank. Okay, so let me go back to let's see, section 2, didn't receive a refund. Okay, we've already covered that. Now, mail. Okay, let's talk about signing and then mailing. So, okay, so section 3, this is where you're going to sign it. So you're going to both. If you have a married filing joint taxpayers, you're going to both sign it and date it, and then print this out. Or print it out first and then sign it and date it. The IRS can be quite fussy about seeing original signatures. So they want like a wet signature, an actual ink pen on the form. So I always recommend, fill this out in a PDF editor, then print it out and actually sign it and then date it. Try to avoid using electronic signatures. In some cases, they will take them, but I've seen more requests returned because they just didn't see an original signature and they got a bit fussy about it. So print it out and sign it and date it, and then mail it in. So now, where do you mail this? Well, the IRS has specific mailing addresses depending on your state of residence. I've got in the description below all the addresses depending upon where you're a resident. So make sure you're mailing it to that appropriate address. Otherwise it just delays the processing time. I think if you mailed it to an address where you didn't live, it wasn't the appropriate mailing address, it would still likely get processed, but it's going to take longer. So in order to avoid those headaches, just go ahead and mail it to the appropriate address depending on your residency, and then you should be all set. Okay, so just to recap again, very important, do not combine EIP payments on one form. If you're missing EIP1 and EIP2, do two separate 3911s, okay? Try to make it as easy as possible for the IRS to review the data and process your request. If you start commingling things, then it just confuses the hell out of them and they don't know what to do. So, yeah, and then like I said at the start, always make sure to include this at the top. Make it very clear what EIP payment you're missing, and that should expedite the process. The top section here, you can leave this blank. This would be completed if the IRS was reaching out to you directly. Okay, that's what these items are for up here. So in this case, you're printing it out and mailing it to them. So this whole section up here at the top, you can leave blank. Okay, so that covers it. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, leave me a comment below, and I look forward to seeing you again on the next video. Thank you.